Now, the United Nations says that the war in Ukraine has forced more than 5.5 million people to flee to other countries. Most of them have taken refuge in neighbouring Poland, where today its President, Andrzej Duda, welcomed the Speaker of the US House. Nancy Pelosi sat down for talks in Warsaw after arriving from Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, where she pledged America's backing until victory over Russia. Well, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the chairman of POSC, or London's Polish Social and Cultural Association. He also wrote in 2014 World War III, about a world war sparked by a Russian invasion of Ukraine. And he joins me now. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. So a pretty prescient book that you wrote back then.
Unfortunately so, and it goes even worse, because the current situation I envisage would scale up, as indeed is happening, and unfortunately it's as if we're walking into World War III, which is precisely what I predicted. I do hope we can avoid it.
Okay, well, we'll get back to that in a moment. Let's talk about Nancy Pelosi in Warsaw talking and praising Poland for what they've done for the refugees. I mean, they've taken 3 million refugees. That's a huge strain on the country.
This is indeed superb. Poland has done very well. There are no camps. Instead of being taken into families, 3 million people, which is a strain, as you rightly say, but Poland has risen up to the occasion, and this is one of its best actions.
Now, they've had their gas supplies cut off because they refused to pay in rubles. What effect do you think it's having on the country?
Well, it's summer now, or spring, and therefore the situation isn't that bad. It's in winter when it will begin to bite. But as you said, of course, Germany hopes to be free at least to some extent of its energy, and I imagine Poland's doing exactly the same.
What is Poland's view and reaction to Germany sort of dragging its feet about some sort of embargo, particularly on Russian gas?
In the Polish view, the Germans are far more pro-Russian than the Poles are, and I think this is correct. The problem about Germany is it would like, as far as I can tell, to go back to the old days very, very easily. So it would, if the war was stopped tomorrow, I'm sure Germany would get back to business deals with Russia.
Yes, indeed. So, but would you say that Poland is pretty disappointed with Germany? Because Germany, in the sense, is a sort of pretty much Germany and France are pretty much, leaders in the European Union, and how they are reacting is that a disappointment to Poland, who've actually stuck their necks out with Bulgaria?
Well, absolutely. In one way, it's not just a disappointment, it is very bad. If Germany and France are dragging their heels, that means the EU as a whole, because these are the most important countries, as you pointed out, are dragging its heels as well. And the problem, therefore, is that Poland is, as you say, sticking its neck out and becoming, as a result, a target.
Indeed, so target, but we've had Nancy Pelosi there in Warsaw saying we will be, with it to the end. We've heard Liz Truss, the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary, saying that, Ukraine's war is our war. A lot of rhetoric is starting to ramp up. How do you think Vladimir Putin is going to react to these sorts of statements?
Unfortunately, I think badly. I don't think there was a need for such rhetorical statements. It raises the stakes of the war quite unnecessarily. It also gives an element of escalation. The exact implication here is that the West is joining full-heartedly on the Ukrainian side, and therefore from that point onwards, it's a real war, but real wars can spread. Russia can go far, far more than it's doing right now, and I would hope that that doesn't happen. But unfortunately, sentences like we must drive the Russians out of Ukraine gives very little hope also for the peace negotiations.
And Crimea in particular.
Yes. Well, it gives very little hope for any peace negotiations. If there is no peace negotiation, and it does look as if this is unfortunately the case the West is, so to speak, financing, in a sense, militarily and financially, the Ukraine, then therefore the war will continue. The longer it continues, the more there is a chance that sooner or later it will go nuclear.
We've had Putin has threatened that. Do you think he means to follow through on his, or is it, do you think when his back is right up against the wall, he may well press that button?
It's quite clear that Vladimir Putin means what he says. After all, let's go through it. He did become president of Russia and turned it more or less into a dictatorship, eliminating some of his rivals. The next point, and journalists. And the next point is he's annexed Crimea, he's suppressed in Chechnya, he's invaded Ukraine. He will and can do it. If he is pressed into a corner, and this is what we're seeing, then he can go the next step. I have no doubt in my mind that he could press the button and it would go into, at very least, the first stage would be a tactical nuclear war, which would be a local one, perhaps just involving Poland, as I envisage. But I have no doubt in my mind that he is a man who could do it.
So May the 9th is the big May Day parade in Russia. And do you think they're going to start make some sort of announcement then of when they're going to take it from being a special operation to a war? Do you think there'll be an announcement?
I think that's a very good moment for him to say so, yes. But I think also, and here the media commentary has been quite correct, that he's looking to announce a triumph. And therefore, it would be altogether part of a package, that they're now waging a war, that they're successful to some degree. And I think that's what he's looking for, May the 9th.
But Russia has never actually won a war against the combined forces of the West. And we're seeing quite a lot, we're seeing a lot of the West who are actually, they are holding firm pretty much against Russia.
The problem here is the question of victory, which you've mentioned, Nancy Pelosi, and of course the Foreign Office stating. You've got to debate what it means. If there is a nuclear exchange, then the question is what sort of victory? In other words, what's going to be left afterwards? I would hope that we don't get in this far into an us versus them, which is what is happening now, because if it goes all the way to nuclear, then the only loser is the whole world. We really ought to try and avoid a nuclear war, which on top of it may even be biological as well. There are all sorts of very, very powerful weapons out there which could leave the world a much worse place. Therefore, it should be, first of all, some sort of peace negotiation should be starting to set up now, and the talks are not going on because obviously the West is, so to speak, as I put before, financing Zelensky in every sense. Secondly, it's very important that we think about aggressive interdiction. That's my term for it. Bombing Russian soil implies that sooner or later, to me, that there will be a retaliation. It needn't be in Ukraine. It could be in Poland, where I envisage it will take place. It needn't even be conventional. Countries who stick their neck out and punch above their weight may have a problem, as Poland discovered in 1939.
Okay, for the moment, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation.